from a guy that's going to be the next senator from West Virginia, John Racy. The next congressman from West Virginia, David McKinley. But you may be saying, does it really matter? You know, I was reading a book not so long ago. It's called His Excellency. It's about George Washington and the early years when he was fighting in the Revolutionary War. And he stated in that book, and I wish I had it here to read you the quote perfectly, but he said, the thing he feared more than the force of the entire might of the British Army was cynicism. And I think we've gotten to a point, after what we've heard in Washington, and what we hear all the time coming from the Obama administration, there's a lot of cynicism as to whether things can get better. Folks like my mom and dad, a dad is a coal miner for 44 years, a Democrat, a grandmother that's worked the polls for Robert Byrd since 1956. A Democrat, but got clean running water in her home less than 5 years ago. This is not an unusual story. This is the story of West Virginia. And this is a state that's paid a heavy price by the leadership we've had over the past 75 years. Let me give you a couple numbers here. And I'm not going to kill you with numbers, but these numbers tell a big story. In terms of employment, number 33 in percentage of jobs in manufacturing. That's West Virginia. Number 9 in the percentage of jobs in government. One of 10 states with no Fortune 500 companies whatsoever. In terms of our economy, number 49 in the United States for per capita income. Number 50 in the United States for real estate appreciation over a 30-year period. Now imagine that. Over a 30-year period, you buy your home, it appreciates far less here than it does in any other state in the country. That's a real problem, and that's a problem of leadership. That's a problem of companies leaving to go other places. Number 49 in the United States for per capita gross domestic product. Number 4 in the United States for children living in poverty. Number 1 in the United States for the number of female-headed households living in poverty. Number 2 in the percentage of population receiving food stamps. Number 50 in the United States in terms of highest per capita income. That per capita income that create jobs all across the state. Number 2 in the United States for projected population loss through 2030. Now, if we weren't sitting on the ground, I'm sure you'd want to jump out of a window with those numbers. But that's why this election is so important, that you get to the polls and that you get your neighbors to the polls and you get your family to the polls, because we can change these numbers in West Virginia, but it's entirely up to you to do that. We can't do it by ourselves. As I said before, this is not about Democrat versus Republican versus independent. We're all in this together. This is about building ourselves up in West Virginia and choosing the direction we choose to move forward. Now, I'm not going to continue. I could talk for hours about this, because there are important issues that we have to talk about moving forward. We're going to hear those things in the next 61 days, give or take a day. But I'd like you to be able to hear from the next senator from West Virginia, John Racy, as he runs this battle across the state of West Virginia. As we're focused so hard on trying to create jobs, as we don't hear from President Obama the solutions we need in terms of creating those jobs. I was traveling not so long ago, and I was asked about the greatest concerns of West Virginians. And the concern I hear from folks, that I hear from coal miners, is why is that war in Washington being waged on me? Why am I at risk every week of potentially losing my job? I live in fear on a daily basis that my home is the next to be foreclosed on. 2 weeks ago, 500,000 new jobless claims, and we've heard that it's the Bush administration's fault. Well, at some point, you have to start making decisions and standing on your own record. We've also heard, and this is not, let's say, facts are stubborn things. And what we've heard from many folks is how conservative our present governor is, the guy who wants to be in the United States Senate. But I was asked by the newspapers you may have read today, what do you think about conservative Governor Manchin? And I said, well, he's the type of conservative any liberal would love, because the record doesn't prove out. Over the past 6 years, state spending's increased by 45%. 45%. We now have public financing of state Supreme Court races. Doesn't sound like a conservative principle to me. He supports Obamacare. He supports card check. These are things that will take jobs away from West Virginia. They will take health care out of your control and put it into the control of government. These are things we can't afford. These are things we don't want. And these are things we have to roll back. So without further ado, let me introduce the next senator from the state of West Virginia, John Racy.